Diana's sister's betrayal, the Spencer family war. The rain over Althorp that morning fell like a quiet confession, steady, cold, and cleansing. Princess Diana stood by her window, watching the droplets chase one another down the glass, her hands pressed together as if in prayer. The world still called her the people's princess, but here, in her childhood home, she was just Diana Spencer again, a woman stripped of titles, smiles, and crowns. She was home, yet she had never felt so far from belonging. For weeks, the headlines had shouted her pain louder than she ever could. The divorce had torn her from the palace walls, but what truly broke her wasn't the loss of a crown, it was the silence from someone she once trusted most, her sister, Sarah. Sarah Spencer, her mirror, her rival, her first friend, her deepest wound. Diana's mind drifted back to the days when they were inseparable girls, running barefoot through the wet grass of Northamptonshire. Sarah had always been bold, the one who dared to climb the apple tree first, who laughed louder, lived freer. Diana adored her. She looked up to her. When Sarah dated Prince Charles before her, Diana had thought it amusing, a family story they'd tease each other about someday. But when that same sister betrayed her years later, the laughter died in Diana's heart. It began quietly, with whispers Diana wasn't meant to hear. Conversations behind closed doors, advice given to the press off the record. Sarah had spoken to reporters about her fragility, her moods, her marriage. And though Sarah insisted it was harmless, the world twisted every word until Diana's tears became public property. For Diana, it wasn't just betrayal, it was a wound only a sister could inflict. Still, she never confronted her. Not truly. For all her pain, Diana could never bring herself to fight cruelty with cruelty. If I can't be loved, she had once told a friend softly, then at least let me be kind. But kindness, she knew now, was often the hardest crown to wear. One evening, as the sun dipped low, she whispered into the breeze. I betrayed you once, but your love never left me. And now, through kindness, I try to keep you alive. She looked at her reflection, two faces overlapping in the soft light. One gone, one living. Both changed. The wind brushed her cheek like a sister's touch. And for a fleeting, eternal moment, Sarah felt forgiveness in the air, not from the world, not from history, but from Diana herself. Epilogue. Years after her death, Diana's legacy became something far greater than the scandals that once haunted her. It became a movement, a quiet revolution of compassion. Hospitals, charities, and ordinary people across the world carried her light forward. And among them was Sarah Spencer, who dedicated the rest of her life to humanitarian work in her sister's name. She rarely spoke of the betrayal anymore. When asked about Diana, she would only smile gently and say, "She taught me that the greatest royalty is in the heart." Because in the end, forgiveness had done what even fame could not, it turned heartbreak into healing, and rivalry into remembrance. Diana had always believed love was stronger than pain. And in the silence of Althorp, beneath the willow trees, her truth still whispered through the wind. Be kind. Even when it costs you everything. Dizzy final message. Diana's sister's betrayal, the Spencer family war, is not just a story about royalty or scandal, it's about the timeless human struggle between pride and forgiveness. It reminds us that even in families torn apart by jealousy or pain, compassion can rebuild what cruelty destroys. Because love, once given freely, never truly dies, it simply waits to be forgiven. All I ever wanted was for us to love each other again. Sarah's eyes filled. Then love me, even if I don't deserve it. The two sisters stood there, two women who had been broken in different ways, trying to rebuild something that fame had shattered. Diana reached out, placing a hand on Sarah's cheek. Do you remember what Mummy used to say? She whispered. That no crown shines brighter than a kind heart. Sarah nodded, tears falling freely now. You never forgot that, did you? No, Diana said softly. Because it's all I have left. They fell into each other's arms, sobbing, years of silence melting into forgiveness. Outside, the rain had stopped. The moon broke through the clouds, flooding the window with light. For the first time in years, Diana felt light again. Over the next few months, their relationship slowly began to heal. Diana spent more time at Althorp, away from the noise of London. She'd begun visiting hospitals again, helping children with AIDS, comforting mothers in pain, small acts of compassion that gave her strength. Sarah joined her once, quietly, without cameras. They visited a hospice together, and Diana watched as her sister knelt beside a young girl with cancer, holding her hand gently. When the girl smiled, Sarah looked at Diana with tearful eyes, as if she finally understood what had always made her sister extraordinary. "It's not about fame," Sarah whispered later, as they walked outside. "It's about love, isn't it?" Diana smiled. "It always was." But fate, as always, was impatient. On a warm August night in Paris, news spread across the world like wildfire, the kind of news that makes time itself stand still. Princess Diana was gone. In the days that followed, millions mourned. Flowers carpeted the gates of Kensington Palace. Strangers wept together in the streets. And amidst that ocean of grief, one woman stood silently, broken in a way only a sister could be. Sarah had lost her rival, her mirror, her friend, and the only person who had ever truly known her heart. At the funeral, as Sarah walked behind the coffin draped with the royal standard, she thought of their last conversation, Diana's words echoing like a hymn, "No crown shines brighter than a kind heart." When she stood at the podium to speak, her voice trembled, but her spirit was steady. "Diana taught me that kindness is not weakness," she said. "That love can survive betrayal, and forgiveness can heal the wounds the world cannot see. My sister was more than a princess. She was the best of us, and she forgave me when I couldn't forgive myself." The cathedral fell silent, and even the cameras seemed to weep. Years later, when the crowds had moved on and the flowers had faded, Sarah often returned to Althorp alone. She'd sit by the lake where Diana was buried, her reflection rippling beside the water. Sometimes she brought roses, other times, she simply sat in silence. The day she saw Sarah again was one she'd dreaded. The Spencer family was gathering for their father's memorial. Years had passed since they'd spoken properly. As Diana stepped into the old drawing room, every memory returned, the laughter, the secrets, the sisterhood that once felt unbreakable. Sarah was already there, standing by the piano, her posture still regal, her expression unreadable. Their eyes met, and for a long, aching moment, neither moved. "Diana," Sarah said finally, her voice tight but trembling. "Sarah." It was all they managed. The room was filled with portraits of ancestors who had survived wars and scandals of their own. Yet, in that quiet hall, it was the two Spencer sisters who were fighting a battle history would never record, one between pride and forgiveness. As the ceremony began, Diana felt her composure slipping. Memories of her father's kindness mingled with the ache of everything she'd lost, her marriage, her privacy, her peace. She had been adored by millions, yet abandoned by the few she needed most. When she looked again at her sister, she saw not a rival, but a reflection of herself, a woman also scarred by the press, also searching for dignity in a world that feasted on their flaws. For the first time, Diana wondered if perhaps Sarah's betrayal had been born not of malice, but of fear. That night, Diana couldn't sleep. The house was silent, the countryside wrapped in mist. She walked through the halls of Althorp, barefoot, her silk nightgown whispering against the floor. She paused at the nursery, the one they'd shared as children. On the dresser lay a cracked photograph, the Spencer sisters at age 8 and 10, arms around each other, eyes full of mischief. Diana smiled sadly. How strange that the same heart capable of loving so deeply could also be so easily broken. Behind her, a voice spoke softly. "You never changed, you know." Sarah stood in the doorway, her face pale in the moonlight. She held a glass of water, her hands trembling slightly. Diana didn't turn. "I think we all changed, Sarah. The world made sure of it." Sarah sighed. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I know. I thought if I spoke first, if I told them you were struggling, they'd leave you alone. I didn't realize I was feeding the very beast I wanted to protect you from." The confession hung in the air. Diana turned now, eyes glistening. Do you know what hurt the most? It wasn't the lies they printed. It was knowing you gave them the brush to paint me with. Sarah's breath caught. I was jealous, Dee. You were everything I couldn't be. Loved by the world, adored by him. Even when it fell apart, they still chose you. And I hated myself for hating you. Diana's heart ached. For years she'd carried her own wounds, the betrayal of a husband's infidelity, the pressure of perfection, but she had never imagined her sister's envy was just another form of pain. She stepped closer, her voice trembling.